Senator Pelton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It feels kind of eerie to be the first one after a little break. But back to what I was talking about. You know, I heard this bill in committee. We heard from several people that testified that said the language of this bill is just poorly drafted. You know, it's hard to understand. The good senator from Brighton was going on about all the different guns and things that would be outlawed with this bill. And one of them, you know, I think if we would just take it out would help clarify quite a bit. And so, Madam Chair.
There is an amendment at the desk. Would the clerk please read Amendment L22?
Amendment L22. Amend printed bill, page 4, lines 20 and 21. Strike means any of the following and substitute means. Page 4, strike lines 22 through 26 and substitute section, a gas-operated semi-automatic handgun with a detachable magazine.
Senator Pelton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, the wording explains it all. What this amendment does is just strictly takes out gas-operated semi-automatic handgun with a detachable magazine. You know, just removing that really cleans up the language in this bill quite a bit. So with that, I would move L022 and ask for a yes vote.
Thank you for moving your amendment, Senator Pelton. Now Senator Pelton B.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support of the amendment. I think this will really clean up a lot of stuff, and especially when it comes down to figuring out what is a gas-operated semi-automatic handgun and detachable magazine. Again, we're going to have to. The sheriff told us, one of the sheriffs told us, he's going to have to send it off the CBI to see if that's what the gun is or what the weapon does. So it's not like they can see it right off the bat. I mean, especially when you're talking about gas operated, they're going to have to tear it apart to make sure that that is gas operated. So I think this will clean it up a little bit. And this is I rise and ask for an aye vote.
Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise for a no vote on L022. Ignoring the semi-automatic rifles that accept detachable magazines, including the AR-15s and the AK-47s, and the gun used in the deadliest mass shootings, the semi-automatic shotguns that accept detachable magazines, which are primarily AR and AK-style shotguns, would severely limit Senate Bill 3 aim at protecting the public. Makes no sense to require fixed magazines for AR-15 pistols, but not the AR-15 rifles. For example, when the only difference between the two items is the latter has a shoulder stock. So with that, I ask for a no vote on L022.
Is there any further discussion on L22? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of L22. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no? No. The noes have it, and L22 is lost. Senator Pelton, B.
Yeah, so, thank you, Madam Chair. So, ever since I got to this chamber, I found out, I've learned several things on how we do stuff. And one of those is that felonies don't stop crime, is what my understanding is. So, especially on Monday, I was in the Judiciary Committee, and I heard that over and over and over again. And so, I'm going to run an amendment to fix that in this.
Let's just take a break.
Okay.
Let the majority leader just take a
Oh, sure.
Majority Leader Rodriguez.
Senatorial 5, please.
Senatorial 5. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to begin as we shift the contour of the debate related to Senate Bill 3. First, by extending a moment of gratitude to the sergeants, to our nonpartisan staff, to the bill drafters, and to everybody who is here, to the custodians who are helping us continue this work, even though it's almost 10 o'clock at night. I want to start there. And with that, Madam Chair.
There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L25?
Amendment L25.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L25 to 003.
To the amendment.
Thank you. We heard concerns both in committee and then also in the opening moments of this debate related to transfers to heirs, H-E-I-R-S, heirs. And so this amendment clarifies that language in order to be responsive to those concerns. I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We started out this morning, or I guess it was this afternoon, it felt like this morning, looking at the committee report and the fact that we were amending to the introduced bill. And let me pause and add my voice. We may not agree on anything else as we continue through the balance of the debate, but I want to add my voice of gratitude to all of the nonpartisan staff, the drafters, the folks behind the counter here running the clerk's desks, the sergeants, and all the people that care about this who continue to remain engaged in supporting this process. So on that, we agree completely. As to the direction we're taking with the bill, I think that there are some elements of these amendments that in fact might find minute improvement, but generally, based on what I know at this point, we are not on a track to get to a successful conclusion that this is Constitution honoring, principle honoring legislation that we will end up discussing. So to Amendment 25, which is where we are. Page 5, line 18, this has to do with the transfers. It would, line 18 here, we're striking heir and strike state and substitute state. So this has the effect, and the bill sponsors might want to redirect me here if I've got this wrong, of not allowing for the transfer to an individual in another state. That's the way I'm reading the bill at this moment, at this late hour, on the fly, as we're trying to reconcile and understand these amendments. That is one part of the amendment. Then we jump over to page 7 into the introduced bill, line 5. This is again in the section dealing with transfer. The transfer or sale of a specified semi-automatic firearm to and receipt or purchase of a specified semi-automatic firearm by federal, state, or local historical society, a forensic laboratory, and then immediately following that, for analysis, the forensic laboratory, and it adds another element, a transfer that occurs by operation of law or because of the death of a person for whom the prospective transferor is an executor or administrator of an estate or a trustee of or a trust created in a will. So that looks to me to be more permissive as I'm reading it. So that piece of it I may like. I'm not sure that I like the other part of the amendment. So colleagues, if others have thoughts that they want to add to this, I'm certainly open to it. I'm agnostic or certainly conflicted on support or opposition. I do not like the limitation I perceive in the first part of the amendment, so I guess I will say I'm a no vote and urge a no vote on this amendment.
Senator Rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was going along there and trying to follow the minority leader. And maybe the sponsor can clear this up, but on page 5, where you strike air, it seems like you can transfer a specified semi-automatic firearm to an individual residing in another state or a federally licensed firearm dealer, since you are striking the word air. I thought what was on 6 was more just editorial, but on 7, maybe you could explain exactly where you're going with that small paragraph E.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the good senator from Grand Junction for the question. So, to ensure that we're on the right place in the bill, we're on page 7, line 5, where we are talking about the types of you'll see here, beginning on page 5, line 20, the section does not apply to, and then you'll see a series of exemptions, and then you'll see E, that is, and now I'm on L25, line 5, a transfer that occurs by operation of law or because of the death of a person for whom the prospective transferor is an executor or administrator of an estate or a trustee of a trust created in a will. And so what we are seeking to do is to ensure that the individuals, when they're in that process of transferring of a firearm, whether that is related to law or whether it is related to death, that they can do so.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And so, colleagues, I come back to this. As I said earlier, the second part of the amendment I liked. I felt it was more permissive in nature. It does allow for transfer upon death, and I think that is valuable. The first part that I was a little bit confused and opposing was where I thought it was more restrictive. It's actually the oddities of the drafting convention where we were striking words in order to get at a comma, and the comma is not a problem. So I remove my objection to Amendment 25 to Senate Bill 3.
Great. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of L25. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and L25 is adopted. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
There is an amendment at the desk. Would the clerk please read L027?
Amendment L027,
Senator
amend printed
Gonzalez.
bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L27 to 003.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What this amendment seeks to do, and this is, again, as we are navigating the bill, on the printed bill, page 5, line 7. This is as we pertain to Section 2 of the bill, Sub 1, which begins on page 3, as used in this section, unless the context otherwise requires. And then as we go forward through that, and then we get to, let's see, D1, a specified semi-automatic firearm means any of the following except as provided in the following. Then you get to page 5, line 7, and this language seeks to ammunition, including a semi-automatic firearm that has been converted to have a permanently fixed magazine that cannot accept more than 15 rounds of ammunition. What this amendment seeks to do is to address the firearms that have had detachable magazines that have actually been modified. And so we exempt those out from the rest of the, that section of the policy, and I ask for an aye vote.
Oh, Senator Carson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so this amendment basically does expand one of the exemptions from the bill. It amends the language around the exemption which has a firearm that has a permanently fixed magazine that cannot accept more than 15 rounds of ammunition. This would add to that and include a semi-automatic firearm that has been converted to have a permanently fixed magazine that cannot accept more than 15 rounds of ammunition. So basically just adds in those that have been modified, expands on the exemption, so we do not have an objection to it.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion for the body is L027. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and L27 is adopted. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have an amendment for SB 003.
There is an amendment
This is
at the
amendment.
desk. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is,
Oh, wait, so 1 second. The clerk, I forgot to ask the clerk to please read the amendment.
Amendment L029, amend printed
Senator
bill.
Sullivan.
thank you, Madam Chair. I'm presenting L029. What this is I move L029.
Thank you.
And so what this is doing is on the permit, or the permit to sell a bill that was passed last year, this is in doing the enforcement of the large capacity magazine prohibited sales. So it was an M2 before, and now we're increasing it to an M1. So with that, I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Bright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for the bill sponsor. Looks like we're moving this misdemeanor penalty from a Class 2 to a Class 1. Is that more severe or less severe in direction?
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much. And I think the bill sponsor was going to step in and offer clarification. I would welcome that.
Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this is a more severe penalty. That's a part of what we were planning to do with having a permit to sell, that if people were in violation of the law, that there would be consequences for it, and this is one of them.
Senator Bright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With that clarification, as we're looking at a penalty for having something that that were allowed by the U.S. Constitution, I would have to say that I would not be a proponent of this amendment. Thanks.
Seeing Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much. Put a finer point on it. The opposition to this is the position that I would take as well. It is a more severe penalty for something that I do not think should be criminalized in the first place.
Senator Gonzalez.
Well, do I have a conversation to have with y'all about POW-PO? But that's a different day, and that's a different bill. We'll have that conversation later to the good senator from Platteville.
The motion before the body is the adoption of L29. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. L29 is adopted. Senator Gonzalez. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read L030?
Amendment L030.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L30 to 003 and ask for an aye vote.
Great. To the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, in the hearing that we held in the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, there was so much concern raised about, what this bill might do to the great Western spirit and heritage of hunting and all of this. My co-prime sponsor actually spoke to, the good senator from Centennial actually spoke to a letter that he received from a man in the Fort Collins area and his 82-year-old wife who uses a hunting rifle to feed their family. You know what? This is how this process works. I'm not going to go through in the same manner that the minority leader alluded to earlier, walking folks through the process. But what I will do is say that folks raised concerns and we've addressed them. What L30 seeks to do is to exempt out the 40 most commonly used hunting rifles from being applicable under this bill. So we exempt out, I'm not going to read all of the different makes and models because there are several, but 40 different firearms that are used for hunting purposes out of this bill. I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Pelton, R.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And before I go into description, will this, where these are exempted, allow them to be bought, sold, traded?
Senator Pelton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a good start. I have several rifles that are not in this list. There is not a single pistol in this list. So while it's a good start, I think it lacks in being complete. So with that, I would ask for a no vote.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I too rise in gratitude for the amendment. It is a step in the right direction. 40 of the most common, or I think 40 was the number, a substantial number of the most common. But I will tell you that my Remington 1100 is not on this list. And it is also a very common shotgun. It's one that I use. And the dog that doesn't bark is, in fact, that no handguns are included in this list as well. So personal protection items that are equally common are missing from the list. So I say thank you. I'm grateful for this. And I would argue we've got a long, long way to go to get to what would be the most common, most frequently, most currently held, and therefore those that should, I believe, be available in the future to individuals as well, lists.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I am grateful for the gratitude and will also say that pistols that don't have magazines greater than 15 rounds aren't captured under this bill. Ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is L30. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and L30 is adopted. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have another amendment for SB 003.
There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L031?
Amendment L031, amend printed bill
Senator
page...
Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L031.
Great. To the amendment. Senator Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pretty simple addition, amendment. Again, we have a list of specified semi-automatic firearms does not include A, B, C, D, E, F. This amendment just, instead of only being an antique firearm, now it includes curio or relic as defined in 27 CFR. I'm supportive of the amendment. It does, again, add to the list of firearms that are not exempt.
Great. Seeing no further discussion, the question before the body is the adoption of L31. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed, no. That is adopted. L31 is adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L032?
Amendment
Senator
L032.
Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L32 to 003 and ask for an aye vote.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment is meant to further clarify the authority that the Attorney General has to help provide guidance to the FFLs and other interested parties across the state related to the categories and makes and models and so on and so forth of what this bill applies to and what this bill does not, so that it's clear for firearm purchasers, for firearm sellers, for law enforcement agencies, and it also allows that guidance to thereafter be made publicly available so that any Coloradan can go and review the guidance and ensure, oh, this one applies, this one doesn't, this is what I could do, okay, this is helpful. We want to make sure that as we work to educate Coloradans about these policies, that there is clarity. And this amendment helps ensure that the Attorney General for the state has the ability to do so. Ask for an aye vote. Thank you.
Senator Baisley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At least part of what the good senator from Denver, North Glen, is incorrect. So what this does on page 9, beginning line 13, this change will then read for the paragraph beginning 13 through 19, with this amendment will then read, pursuant to the authority granted in section 2431-101, the Attorney General may provide guidance and clarification to assist in the implementation of section 1812-116, which is this bill. The Attorney General may publish and make publicly available guidance and opinions concerning the section, which is this bill. The problem with it and the disconnect between what the good senator from North Glen said, North Side, is the removal of the words for law enforcement agencies and firearm buyers and sellers. So while in the original language here, the Attorney General was to provide guidance and clarification for law enforcement agencies and firearm buyers and sellers, that is now deleted. That is removed, stricken. So that I find very unfortunate that the Attorney General and the sections that are referred to here are from section 2431-101. The two items, 1A and 1D, are descriptions of the Attorney General acting as a legal representative of the state and legal counsel and giving his or her opinion. So that's the biggest issue that I have for the law enforcement agencies and firearm buyers and sellers who were originally to be advised will no longer be advised in this change.
Senator Gonzalez.
To the good senator from Woodland Park, I appreciate the question. No, I wasn't misspeaking when I was talking about law enforcement agencies and firearm buyers and sellers. Because line 6 of L32, instead of just publishing the guidance that the Attorney General can provide, line 6 of L32 allows the publishing and making said guidance publicly available. So not only limiting it to law enforcement agencies and firearm buyers and sellers, but also anybody, any Coloradan who wants to understand the guidance of what firearms are permissible, what firearms might need to be modified. That's what we're seeking to do here. This is really meant to be an educational tool, to be a mechanism to help provide guidance to any and everyone who might be interested in the nuances related to the policy. Ask for an aye vote.
Senator Baisley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank the good senator from up north for the clarification. However, I believe it is less prescriptive and unfortunate, because there were going to be a lot of questions coming specifically from law enforcement agencies and firearm buyers and sellers. So I would recommend a no vote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of L32. All those in favor say aye. And opposed, no. The ayes have it, and L32 is adopted. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have one more amendment for SB 003.
There is an amendment at the desk. Would the clerk please read Amendment L036?
Amendment L036, amend the state veterans and military
Senator
affairs.
Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L036.
To the amendment.
Yes, this one here, we, during the committee, we had put a amendment in there about a gunsmithing school in Trinidad. In the subsequent time between the committee and today, there were some added things we needed to make sure that we put in there, and to specify they have the ability to buy these types of firearms, and then that they would use them only in the private occupational school, and have storage on the location in the gunsmithing school. And with that, I ask for an aye on L036.
Senator Pelton R.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do appreciate this amendment. This school is actually in my district, and I think for them to stay up on their schooling and stuff, that they need this amendment, and so I do like this amendment.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is L36. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. L036 is adopted. To the bill. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to extend my appreciation to all of the Coloradans who have taken time out of their days, out of their lives, to follow along as we navigate this critically important and life-saving policy. Whether you're supportive of the bill, whether you passionately hate the bill, the fact that you care enough to be engaged matters deeply. I'm a person who says, look, man, we might not agree 100% of the time, but if we can at least have a conversation, we are able to move forward. It's when communication actually breaks down that we begin to confront problems, right? And when it comes to the issue related to gun safety, my co-prime sponsor, whose life was fundamentally transformed following a mass shooting. There have been moments when he is unable to speak, and there are moments when he is at the top of his lungs trying to be heard. Heard a lot of discussion about this policy, and we heard a lot of disinformation about what this bill wouldn't do, about what this bill would do. So I want to take a moment to just acknowledge the extent to which we have heard concerns. Concerns from our dear governor, concerns from Coloradans, and we've worked to address them. So I want to take a little bit of time to explain the amendment before I actually offer it, also because it's in the final steps of the editing process, if I'm being really honest. But I want to spend a little bit of time actually just walking through it so that we can engage in dialogue that is useful and productive and not grandstanding and just wasting each other's time. So what we heard as being a concern was, but I'm a lawful, knowledgeable firearm owner. What about me? What the amendment that we will be offering here extraordinarily shortly is establishing a process for a certification course to allow individuals here in the state of Colorado to purchase specified firearms that otherwise would be prohibited under 003. The vetting process, y'all, we're not reinventing the wheel here. It's the same vetting process that one would utilize to obtain a CCW permit. Communication with your sheriff, go through a background check, navigate that process. And then you have one of two options. Now, there is long-standing and already existing hunter safety certification programs that allow individuals to pay a fee, I believe it's $10, to Colorado Parks and Wildlife, take a course, and thereafter an individual can thereafter obtain a hunting license in the state of Colorado. Now, we just exempted out 40 of the most commonly utilized hunting rifles. But if you feel so compelled that you need to have a firearm that otherwise would be prohibited under 003, guess what? We got a solution for you. It's a 4-hour module that would be operated through private vendors under the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Department. It's very similar to the program that individuals already navigate when they are taking their hunter safety education course. Go do that. Now, if you're not a hunter and you haven't taken that hunter safety education course, that's okay, because we got a solution for you too. It's a 12-hour course over the course of 2 days, and thereafter, an individual, either having gone through the hunter route or having gone through the non-hunter route, for the next 5 years, would thereafter be able to purchase a firearm that otherwise would be prohibited under 003. We heard the concerns, and we've addressed them. What happens in year 6? If you don't want to buy another firearm that otherwise would be prohibited, nothing. And if you do, re-up. Take the class, update, go through that similar safety procedure, similar to how you would do under a CCW, and you're good to go. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to explain this amendment. And with that, I ask for a senatorial 5.
Senatorial 5 granted.
waiting for the
Copies. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read L034?
Amendment
Senator
L034.
Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L34 to 003 and ask for an aye vote.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, I went through and, wait, actually, before I even start, I just want to extend one more time my gratitude to Mr. Immel and to all of the OLLS staff who has worked so diligently to ensure, look, they do this every day, but I think particularly now on a late night, I want to start off with gratitude. Now, I walked through conceptually how this amendment L34 is going to work, but I want to walk y'all through it one more time, right? So, what we do in the policy here that is contemplated, the certification course that is contemplated through L34, is a basic firearm safety course for individuals who have obtained already a hunter safety education course, or an extended firearm safety course. Now, we did establish the course that is operated by Parks and Wildlife Commission pursuant to 33-9-115 sub 5, and establish the process for that enrollment and verification procedure. There is a program that CPW and sheriffs and firearms dealers would then be able to check into in order to ensure that, one, the person who signs up for the course is the person who takes the course, and that then that person who has completed successfully and passed the course thereafter can go to a firearms dealer and purchase a weapon that otherwise would be unlawful under 003. That process would, again, mirrors the CCW permit process for verification, and this process, this eligibility, the firearm safety course certification would be valid for 5 years. As I'm moving now to page 3, section 3 of L034, there are a number of definitions that we create, and I do just want to clarify that on page 4 of the amendment, line 3, the system is not a record. We know that there is a prohibition at the local level of databases. This is not a database. This is merely the procedure and process to ensure that the CPW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, that the firearms dealers and the local sheriffs are able to verify that the person who takes the course, who does the course, and then who thereafter seeks to purchase a firearm following this certification, that we can ensure that that person is who they say they are. Now, with that, salud.
Bless you.
I ask for an aye vote and extend my gratitude to all those who have worked so diligently to make this certification process happen.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I rise in opposition to Amendment 34. It's rooted in, I think, an honest understanding of the difference between a right and a privilege. I am privileged to hunt in the state of Wyoming because I have an appropriate hunter's license. I am privileged to hunt in the state of Colorado because I have a Colorado hunter's license. I'm privileged to serve in this chamber because I have a senator ID card. It was in my packet of cards as I pulled them all out. I am privileged to carry a concealed weapon. I am not tonight, but I am privileged to carry a concealed weapon. And I am privileged to drive a car on the United States of America roadways by virtue of the privileges I have from my Colorado driver's license. However, I have a different circumstance with regard to my ability to buy and maintain and own a firearm. That is a right that I have. It is a right that we discussed earlier today that comes to me naturally and is reaffirmed by the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. Now, it will be argued, or has been argued, however briefly, that you should be glad that this Senate Bill 3 that takes away access or the ability to purchase so many different firearms, you can now have access to those firearms that otherwise would be taken away from you if you just submit to 12 hours of training. And we've got some questions, I suppose, about whether I get an ID card, whether I get a CID number like I have from my hunter safety and my hunting license, or what happens. I guess I become a card-carrying member of the people who actually have validated their rights by having education so they can actually access a firearm that is on a list of firearms that are chosen by certain people not to be available except by virtue of having had this particular set of education. So it is the conflict between the difference of a privilege and a right that causes me to rise up and oppose this Amendment 034. You'd think I'd say, well, sure, it's a small thing to get a little bit of education to get at a firearm, but it's a big thing to turn your back on your rights as a citizen. And as we know frequently now, it's not just citizens. Anybody who gets into this country is protected by the rights that we have by virtue of the fact that we are standing on terra firma in the United States of America. So I object to this based on that principled argument. Were this a normally developing bill where we have the final, this is what the real policy we're looking for document more than a few minutes before we engage in debate at the hour of 10:40 in the evening, probably would have other nuanced arguments, other requests for potential amendment, but instead I just stand here and stamp my feet and say, no, I have rights, and this amendment offends those rights. I urge your opposition to 034 to Senate Bill 003.
Seeing Senator Pelton, no rush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was in proximity, but I didn't want to jump over that and hurt myself for sure. I rise in opposition to this amendment. There's no concession in there for the training that we go through to get our CCW permit, our license. So I really think that that ought to be kind of included, because there is a lot of hours of training that you have to go through. You have to take a test and all those things. You have to demonstrate you can fire that weapon. So without an amendment to this amendment to cover that training, I just can't support this. It's very restrictive in what it does, and again, like the minority leader said, this is a right, this isn't a privilege, and this bill is stomping all over our rights. And my district told me to come to this building and tell them to leave them the hell alone, and this bill is all over them. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the amendment L34. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to respond and engage in a little bit of discussion, because I do think that confuses me as to why We seem okay as a, minority leader even shared his CCW permit. We're okay with that, but not okay with this? Help me understand that.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's the distinction of a right and a privilege. It's a well-established right that we can keep and bear arms. And open carry is something that is protected, provided for, and allowed under the Constitution, and you see it constantly. I got people, I don't know what your neighborhood's like, but I see people in open carry all the time where they're carrying a sidearm open and visible to the world. To carry concealed, we've decided, as a matter of policy, is a privilege. It's something that requires a background check. It requires a little bit more because you have a certain access to circumstances, access to situations, and you can convince yourself of any number of reasons why we landed there. But the reality is, in order to carry concealed, that is a privilege, and it requires a background check, et cetera, et cetera. This particular matter, it isn't about carrying a concealed weapon. It isn't about that at all. It would require an individual to have special training, special permission, essentially, to carry a long gun. You know, I mentioned earlier, my Remington 1100 didn't make the list. Well, if I want to buy one for my grandson, now, got to run my grandson through training in order to get at a standard, learn how to grow up and handle a firearm safely kid weapon. And that is the distinction. The distinction between a right and a privilege. The right is protected under the Constitution. The privilege is something we back into and agree to, like a hunting license, like a driver's license, like what you're trying to make access to a conventional, standard, magazine drop firearm. That is the distinction.
Senator Gonzalez.
By analogy, thank you, Madam Chair. By analogy, if I am to understand the concern in the correct manner, similar to a driver's license, would you be in support of unlicensed drivers having the right to drive on our roads? Those are certainly vehicles that can, those are certainly instruments and machines that can cause death and harm.
Senator Lundin.
Well, the hour's late, so I don't really want to start with Con Law 101, but I suppose we could. We have rights here in America. They're negative rights. That's an odd way of framing it. They're rights that come to us by God. And they're rights that are enshrined and protected by the Constitution. They're limited. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. I would argue under life you get a little bit of property if you work your life right. Oddly, I don't believe you have a right to a free college education. I don't believe you have a right to free health care. I don't believe you have a right to anything. You have to take something from somebody else to get. We could walk through the rights that are enshrined in the Bill of Rights, the first 10 that we talk about all the time. But the hour is late. The argument's well worn. You don't have a right to a car. You have a privilege to have a license, and you have a life, and if you live that life right, you might be able to put enough money together to buy a car, but it's certainly not a right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Pelton R.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have seen this bill morph into something that it wasn't when it came through committee. We've seen a lot of amendments that has changed this bill. And I think we'll add a fiscal note. I think the only true path for this bill is to send it back to State Affairs Committee. There are still a lot of loopholes, not loopholes, but challenges for people that are under threat. They cannot immediately go acquire a firearm. Their lives are be in danger. I think the only fair thing to do for the citizens of Colorado is to send this bill back to committee, have a new fiscal note done to this bill, and then bring it back after it comes out of committee for full debate again, because this is a totally different animal than what we saw a week and a half ago in the State Affairs Committee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Henriksen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm fascinated by this amendment, and I will be supporting this amendment. This amendment, I think, starts to get at differences of historical constitutional philosophy on the Second Amendment. And we've had some, I think, vague conversation about that, but not really dug deep into what those philosophies are and how they apply to the bills that we consider in this chamber, including Senate Bill 3. There is a prominent school of thought that was the prevailing thought in courts for the latter half, especially, of the 20th century, and that was the academic framework of that the Second Amendment was a collective right, that the right was to the states for the ability to create and maintain a militia. The counter thought to that, which is a thought that I myself subscribe to, when you read especially, or at least when I read Federalist 29 in particular and other writings at the time that the Second Amendment was drafted, is that the Second Amendment is an individual right, that the right to bear arms is granted to the individual for the purpose of the state being able to call upon those individuals for a well-regulated militia. At the time of our Constitution's writing, the prevailing thought of the founders was that we would not have a standing army. And so the ability for states to call up a militia in short order, ready to go, was essential to the national defense. And the ability of the federal government to be able to coordinate collective efforts among state militias was essential to that ability. It flows from this philosophy of individual rights, of the Second Amendment as an individual right. Some of the writings we have seen lately by the Supreme Court of the United States, you see language particularly tied to this viewpoint in cases like the Bruin decision, that the Second Amendment applies to what would broadly be considered individual weapons that could be utilized for militia purposes were a state to need to call upon its residents, its citizen residents, for militia service. And that becomes a little complicated under the scope of history. Certainly, what constitutes a militia-style weapon has evolved. So too has what is a militia evolved. Remember, the founders never imagined that we would have a standing army. We quite clearly do. And over 100 years ago, we codified existing formalized state militias into what we now call the National Guard, leaving what is essentially a two-tiered form of militia. There is the National Guard, and there's the general citizenry of the state. So what then is left of the well-regulated part of that militia? And what some constitutional scholars have argued, particularly on the right, is, well, you have to look back to the thoughts of the time of the framing of that amendment and what was the applicable definition of those words and the sentence structure of prevailing English at the time in those days, and apply it to our modern society where things are quite different. So let's think about what a militia meant in the 1780s, 1790s, and 1800s. It was, in most cases, every able-bodied male between the ages of 18 and 40 years old, typically 4 to 6 times a year, you would be assembled for drill for a couple of days a year, typically at a county or community courthouse, where there would be training on camp setup, on cleaning of weapons, of the functionality of weapons, of basic survival techniques in harsh environments and across troop formations. You'd be taught how to march and basic military tactics, and often there was a community party at the end of the event. Often, in most states, it was required that those who participated in the drills or the musters, which would happen usually once every couple of years at a higher than company level, a battalion level, had to arrive at training providing their own ammunition at a cost to themselves. So to partake in the militia required a cost on the individual themselves to be able to go through the actions of what constituted that well-regulated militia at the time. There were some exemptions for those who had religious objections. There were exemptions for those who could not provide their own equipment that was required. And so those people did not necessarily constitute the militia. Otherwise, you were automatically enrolled in the militia and expected to attend. Nevertheless, attendance was low, and so the militia, thus began the militias evolve into what became the National Guard. I bring this up to then look forward to today, where we have this two-tiered militia system. We have the regular army, not the militia, that's our federalized armed forces. You have the National Guard, which is what evolved from the original militia, and you have the general public, which is essentially the secondary militia. Many of the firearms that we're talking about in this bill, I would argue, are absolutely militia-style firearms and should not be broadly prohibited based on the individual view of the Second Amendment. But now we have before us an amendment that sets forth a basic training requirement on the functionality, the safety, the legal and practical use of those firearms, and resources, information about resources available for potential life events where an extreme risk protection order might be necessary. If we are to take a concept from 1780s and apply it as best we can, as seamlessly as we can, to the realities of today, this fits pretty closely with what the regulated militia was. And so, one of the frustrations that I have in this chamber sometimes is this broad sweeping discussion of the Second Amendment without going into any of the depths of the arguments on either the collective view or the individualist view, and a broader misconception writ large that has been, I think, sort of portrayed out there, that the individualist view of the Second Amendment thereby bars any regulation whatsoever of any form of firearms. That's not the case, and that's why I think judges that hold the individualist view have upheld several firearm regulations in the past. We see this in the U.S. versus Miller in 1936, where Tommy guns and other fully automatic weapons were completely banned, and that was upheld by the Supreme Court. We have seen it in cases where the court has upheld that those who've been convicted of domestic violence crimes do not have a right to purchase a firearm. That falls under the well-regulated militia piece. It's an element of law that essentially states that an individual who has committed this behavior is not fit for the militia. It's not a regulation on the on a militia-style firearm, but rather the fitness of the individual to be considered a member of the militia. The Miller example is an example of a firearm that is absolutely not a militia-style firearm, and thus not subject to the protections of the Second Amendment. So here we have an amendment to a bill that I believe, as I've stated very publicly, as introduced, does not fit in the framework of the Second Amendment. That is my opinion. This amendment, whatever your thoughts on the policy that would remain after the amendments, would, I believe, bring it in line with that framework. And so I thank the sponsors for bringing it and ask for an aye vote on this amendment.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just want to rise and acknowledge, I appreciate all the comments, I appreciate the thought that went into that. What this bill and this amendment attendant to that bill does is it essentially disqualifies everyone from being fit to be in this well-regulated militia. Now, the cases that were just argued disqualified an individual for purposes. This bill disqualifies everyone. I just want to make that clear. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Baisley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution does indeed begin with the words about a well-regulated militia. Now that mini preamble to that particularly enumerated right has all kinds of well-documented legal argument behind it. However, our oath of office was not only to uphold or to support the Constitution of the United States of America, but also the Constitution of the State of Colorado, which in Article 2, paragraph 13 reads, the right of no person to keep and bear arms in defense of his home, person, and property, or in aid of the civil power when thereto legally summoned, shall be called into question. There's nothing mentioned in the qualifier of the militia in the state constitution. We are bound to support both constitutions. And let me also add that with this amendment, the requirement to take a class, to pay fees, to get an approval card in advance from the sheriff in order to be eligible to take the class, all of those fees add up to our getting in the way of people exercising their constitutional right. Imagine, before we even get to the Second Amendment, in the First Amendment, if there was a fee or a training process required in order for us to be allowed to exercise our right to enjoy a religion or even to establish a religion, to have our free speech, if we were to be required to pay fees and to get training in order to exercise our speech or our assembly together, or to petition the government for a redress of grievances, if we had to pay a fine, pay a fee, get 2 days of training in order to exercise that right, that moves that from a right to a privilege, as the minority leader was describing earlier. That's what is wrong, everything wrong with this amendment. It gets in the way not only of our rights, but it also challenges our oath of office if we vote in favor of that amendment. So I strongly recommend a no vote on this amendment.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I love and so gratefully extend my respect to the diligent and relentless team of OLLS. There is a couple of drafting things that we need to correct within the amendment. And so at this time, I wish to withdraw L34 for consideration, and thereafter we'll submit a new amendment that follows the process and procedure that we had outlined previously. With that, Madam Chair, to be clear, I move to withdraw L34 to Senate Bill 3 for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. L34 is withdrawn. Majority Leader Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the committee rise report progress and beg leave to sit again on Friday, February 14th.
The motion before the committee is to rise, report progress, and beg leave to sit again on Friday, February 14th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee will rise, report progress, and beg leave to sit again on Friday, February 14th.
Senate will come back to order. Senator Marchman.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had one bill under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
February 13, 2025. Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs leave to report it has met and begged leave to sit again on Friday, February 14th at 12:01 a.m.
Majority Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the balance of the calendar lay over until Friday, February 14th.
The motion is to lay over the balance of the calendar until Friday, February 14th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The balance of the calendar will lay over until Friday, February 14th. Majority Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate adjourn until 12:01 a.m. on Friday, February 14th, 2025.
Heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will stand in adjournment until 12:01 a.m. on Friday, February 14th, 2025.